Welcome to Base is Beautiful. My name is MD. Today I wanted to respond to the recent question posed by Dan at Dan's Vintage PC, I think is the name of his channel. I think a lot of y'all probably follow Dan. And he posed a very thought provoking question as a celebration. I guess it's calling upon a VR, which is what this is. He was asking for collectors to consider what card best represents them as an individual collector, and I guess, your approach to how would you summarize your collection and your approach as a collector with a single card. And I mean, I had an immediate thought, and then I've thought about it, off and on for about a week, and I can't really get past the original thought that I had. It's one of those questions where you should probably go with your gut reaction more than just overthinking it. And, I could sit here and go back and forth about kind of trying to fine tune that concept of what card seems to best exemplify me as a collector and my approach to collecting and my collection. But really, that gut reaction probably does it best. So, my card, before I show it to you, let me just kind of set it up a little bit. I love vintage cards, but this is not a vintage card. Because when I think about the hobby and what gets me excited, a lot of it connects to my childhood growing up in the 80s and 90s. And my time of getting into collecting was, of course, the early 90s, so you kind of get a little bleed over from the late 80s. But thinking about a card from that era, I feel like probably exemplifies me better as a collector and just the things that draw my attention, the parts of the history of sports, I guess, that I'm drawn to because I have personal connection with them. As much as I love vintage cards, I have to learn the history. I have to learn about the players. I have to learn the names of the players. I have to learn something about the time in which they lived, or the what teams they played for, and all these things. I don't have memories attached to those things. And for me, part of the joy of the hobby and collecting is this connection, this nostalgic connection with childhood and growing up and all of that. So I wanted this card exemplifies that to a certain degree. Also, as much as I love Hall of Famers and I collect Hall of Fame players, really my major interest in the hobby tends to find those players that aren't Hall of Fame. Those players that were very good in their time period or their era, players that were important to a team at a certain point of time, players that have kind of fallen on the wayside of baseball history because they weren't enshrined in Cooperstown. And so this card, I feel like, is that. And this card also exemplifies the kind of photography that really gets me excited about cards. So with all that set up, I know I've talked on for like 4 minutes now, but let's see the card that I've chosen. See if you can guess what it might be from the back. Maybe you can guess it. That's right, Topps 455. It is Walt Weiss from the 1991 Topps set. This epic shot of Walt Weiss. I've done a whole video on this card where I trace back and find the actual game that this came from and some information about Walt Weiss as a player. I'll have that link in the description if you want to go back and find that video that I did a little more in depth on this card. So I won't rehash all of that. Of course, I don't remember everything that I said about it, to be honest with you. But this is the Topps Tiffany version of this. The Tiffany sets are fun to collect. Of course, with the 91 set, you also have the Desert Shield possibility that you could go down that rabbit hole if you wanted to. I decided to focus in on the Tiffany, and of course I got this one, a Gem Mint 10, because to me this is the greatest card of the 90s. This is the most epic shot. You know, when I saw this as a kid, and when I pulled this in a pack as a kid, you know, I thought Walt Weiss had to be probably the greatest player to play the game, because otherwise, how else would he have such a cool shot of him, kind of representing him as a player, if he wasn't the greatest player of his generation? And he's not the greatest player of his generation, but he was a very good player of his time, and now is a manager for the Atlanta Braves, which is another interesting connection, because in 1991 I would have been a fan of the Atlanta Braves. So that doesn't have any bearing on this card or the history thereof. But there you go. Congratulations, Dan, on 3 years on YouTube. That's an awesome milestone. I hope to achieve that in due time myself. But hopefully this was fun for you. And thank you for taking the time to watch and hang out with me for a little bit as I yammer on about Walt Weiss, my favorite card of the 90s. I don't know. Hopefully other people connect with that and appreciate this card as well. But anyway, I feel like this exemplifies my collection. Of course, I did think about the 81 Donruss Rod Carew, just because this is this represents the portraiture that I love. And, the 80s are important to me. Rod Carew is an important player in my collection. So, that's a good runner-up. He didn't ask for us to do that, but that's free of charge. But if I'm honest, this is the first card that I thought of when he was describing this video response opportunity, and it's the one I couldn't really shake from my head the more that I thought about other cards. So there you go. Walt Weiss, 1991 Topps, exemplifies base is beautiful, and awesome base cards here. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.